You've tuned into Heroes Wanted. I am your host, Joe Prim. In this episode, we are going to go way back to 2018 to an episode I recorded with a man who has become a good friend. That is Scott Smith. This episode is a great foundation to understanding him and also the early days of Ever Vigilant. This was episode 34. When I bring back these old episodes, I'm always debating if I should re-edit the episode, if I should clear out the early banter by myself, what I should do to change things, if at all. And my decision this time was to not change anything, to just allow this little section of past, of the history of what I've been doing and what I've been developing here, just sit as it originally was released. I think that it's very important not only that we look at our lives and accept where we were at different times because of our maturity or our age or our knowledge or our viewpoint made up who we were at that moment. And although my life is very much different at this point, I have a lot more years of podcasting and communicating under my belt, it's important to realize that where you are today and the destination where you want to get to, there can be a lot of miles or a lot of hours of talking or a lot of effort, a lot of failure, a lot of challenges from where you are today to where you want to go. And you must be willing to accept that in order to get to that destination. In order to get to that destination, that goal, that vision of what you see for where you want to go, the better you as a father, as a husband, as an employer, as a leader in your community. The road from where you are today to that destination will have its challenges, its pitfalls, its narrow stretches, its difficult, its changing grades, its changing temperatures. Everything will change and nothing will change. And all the things that you expected were going to happen may never happen. And all of the things that you never expected to happen may happen continually. All I'm going to say is wherever you are today and wherever it is that you want to go, there is a grand adventure between where you are now and that point. Don't be discouraged. Don't fear the failure. Don't just accept a failure as defeat. Continue moving forward. Always forward, my friends. Always forward. With that, let's jump into it.
Recorded at an undisclosed location known only as the Homestead, you've tuned into Ever Vigilant. Our mission? To encourage and challenge men to prepare, defend, and lead at home and in their communities.
This is episode 34, and I'm your host, Joe Prim. This is your first time listening. Thanks. I hope that you will be challenged and encouraged by this episode. If you've listened in the past, thanks for coming back. If you enjoy this podcast, I would really appreciate you sharing it with men that you know, your friends, your neighbors, those in your church, and those in your community. Really trying to push brotherhood and unity on this podcast, and it's sorely needed in our communities and especially in our churches today. So if you can share this with others, I've seen an uptick in the amount of listeners to the podcast lately. Apparently you guys are sharing this. I appreciate that. Please continue to share it on social media and with those that you know in the real world, in meat space. I would appreciate it, and hopefully we can get this going so that more and more groups of men are popping up and realizing around this country the need for brotherhood, the need for unity, and hopefully we can make some changes in this country. Just one community, one small brotherhood, one small pack at a time versus trying to change everything all at once or in the big picture. Let's look small picture. Let's look circle of influence. Let's look what's going around right around us and try to change those areas, not the whole world at one time. Let's focus on smaller and let that grow to become something bigger. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. This episode is great. I got a chance to talk with Scott Smith from Banished from Eden. Be sure to check out his blog, banishedfromeden.com, and follow him on Instagram at banishedfromeden. I got up real early this morning while everybody in my house was still asleep to record this intro and outro, and I didn't get up before the puppies. So if you hear the squeaking and crying and whining in the background, it's because we got a live audience here. 12 puppies. They will be leaving soon. So if you are interested in big dogs, like real dogs, we do have some pups still available. They are Pyrenees and Anatolian Shepherd mix. They do a great job watching our goats and protecting them from the coyotes around here at night. So if you are interested, email me, direct message me. A quick funny story before we get into this podcast. My wife is worried that we're going to end up with extra puppies that don't sell. So we were kind of surprised and shocked that we ended up with 12 puppies. It's a lot of puppies. As we were talking the other day, I came up with this brilliant idea. You know, there are a lot of people living in apartments and condos or in areas where the homeowners associations don't allow them to have real dogs, over 50, 60 pounds. And so my brilliant idea was, how about we do sponsorships for these puppies? For $10 a month, we will take care of this pup, supply you with pictures for your social media accounts, and we will take care of its shots, and once a year, you will have the ability to show up on the homestead and actually visit your dog for pictures for your social media accounts. So anybody out there who wants a real dog, a dog over 60 pounds, but can't have one in where they're living at the moment because of restrictions, for $10 a month, you can pretend like you have one. Just let me know. No, all joking aside, the puppies have been a pleasure to have. Some of them are sold already. We have more people coming to look this weekend. They'll be actually 8 weeks old. In the back of our minds, we're thinking, what in the world are we going to do if we end up with a few extra pups? I will say, though, they are fun to be around. They are a pleasure. 12 puppies is kind of crazy, but it's been fun to watch them grow. It's been fun to watch them only 8 weeks ago be completely helpless and hanging on to their mom for dear life, and now independent, running around, playing, see each of their own individual personalities, and it's been actually a real treat. I've been around, had puppies in the past, but never paid maybe as close of attention or appreciated it as much as I did this time, trying to look at things a little bit differently, and it has been fun. So if you're interested in puppies or like puppies or want to talk about puppies or think about puppies or ask questions about puppies, but before this turns into the puppy podcast, let me do a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll get to this great interview with Scott Smith. Are you looking for a quality Kydex holster or magazine carrier? Check out vigilantwolf.com. Are you looking for a quality handcrafted concealed carry belt, competition belt, or tactical belt? Check out vigilantwolf.com. Do you want to smell like the man you've always wanted to be? Check out vigilantwolf.com for Wolfpack brand of men's grooming products. Use promo code EV10 for 10% off your next purchase. From here, we'll jump right into this conversation I had, again, with Scott Smith from banishedfromeden.com. How's the Banished from Eden going and the blog and stuff?
So I don't get to pay as much attention to it as I like. I need to add merchandise to it, and I need to kind of figure out what the next step in the evolution of it is going to be. So I think I'm putting out content, about twice a month. I might start trying to see if I can get some guest posts or something like that, but I'm not really sure what God's plan is for it. That's a great question. My wife and I have even talked about it lately, and been very fortunate with getting it off the ground. And I enjoy writing a lot. I just probably need to get a little bit more disciplined as far as having time to do it. So that's a great question. I'm not sure. I don't have a 5-year plan, so I'm just trying to get through this week.
Well, that's a good answer, Scott. Make me feel a little bit better about myself. I'm not the only one in this boat.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm doing it right, man. I'm just doing it.
So it feels like life by braille.
Yeah, a lot of times. I mean, it's been pretty interesting. I mean, I enjoy it. A lot of my friends they're kind of shocked. I mean, I don't know if I told you, but I got saved in June of last year. So, I mean, I denounced my faith and walked away over a decade ago and didn't believe in it anymore. And I was an agnostic for about 10 years by the time it was all said and done. And so I just have really, I'm one of those people, I'm all in or I'm all out, and there's no in between for me. And so for me, it's been a crazy time to go from June 28th of getting saved to December 31st preaching at church. I mean, so essentially 6 months, almost 6 months to the day, and I'm preaching at our church. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy, and we have been under so much spiritual attack. I've been hit financially. We've been hit physically. We've been hit in every single area. We have so many things like up in the air right now that we're kind of waiting on God to answer or push us in a direction. It's absolutely nuts. So I was telling my wife the other day, I was like, I didn't have these problems when I was an agnostic. I'll tell you that. It's just one thing after another. But we also, Joe, believe that God's given us a vision, and it's a big vision. And so it makes sense. I mean, if we had a whole lot more time, I could tell you all about my story and how God showed up and how he went out of his way to get me. And we don't believe that the 10 years that it was random or that it was just rebellion, but that God allowed it and protected me through it, and that it was all training for his purpose. And so I'll never doubt God again. I will always have questions because that's the way he made me, but I'll never doubt his existence again or his love for me. And so I'm all in. So whatever that is, as far as what's next for us, we're in, and we're gonna do it. We will. I said the day I got baptized, I spoke to a lot of people that day. A large crowd, you can imagine, came out, and it's been a long time. A lot of people praying for me. My wife has been active in church forever, and I just said, we're going to be about the Father's business, and the only thing that will limit what we can do for the kingdom is our fear, and I don't plan on letting that get in the way. So yeah, we've been getting hit lately, but I know God's in it, and Paul refers to the patience, endurance of trials. And I believe that's where we're at, submitting to the authority of God and completely having our trust in him and having to rely upon him. I mean, he's removed a lot of safety nets from my life because he knows that he's gonna force me into a position to be 100% reliant upon him. And I'm a slow learner, so. But it's all good, man. My wife and I, we're in it together. I do want to see some breakthroughs pretty soon, just as for some things that my kids are really praying hard about. I know we're getting fatigued, and we're kind of fighting against that frustration of timing, and my kids are doing the same, but probably more intense. It's more multiplied for them. So I'd like to see a couple of things they've been praying for come to fruition, and kind of set their faith foundation for the rest of their lives. So because they got a huge year last year, right, when I get saved, after they prayed for so long. And then, but they prayed for some pretty specific things for themselves that we encourage them to fast for. So I'd like to see those things come to pass for them. But, if they don't, I'm sure God has a reason. But we're doing everything that we can to implore him to do it for them. So.
Man, it's one of those things where it's either way you're setting that foundation correctly, even if the answer is no, or it's not what you want to hear. The foundation that you are building for them of fasting when you have something of great concern in your life is priceless, man. I'll tell you what, that's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're pretty, man, we're just all in.
You have no idea, Scott, how happy it makes me to hear another man talk like this, because I grew up in the church my whole life, and I think you kind of did too for a while, right? Most of your childhood.
I did, yeah.
I don't hear what you're saying to me said very often. For certain, not often enough. And I think about, what God could do with 10, 12 guys with the attitude that you have of complete surrender of everything, all those safety nets, and just say, hey, man, it is what it is. I relate a lot to what you're saying, because that has kind of happened to us too over this last 6 to 8 months, just trying to, just seek what God wants versus what's easy. Because although the easy track becomes so tempting some days, I would have a hard time going through the motions day in and day out with the burden, and where I feel like God's trying to lead me. So believe me, man, I completely relate.
Yeah, God, I got to tell you, I mean, I've really come a long way in this short time as far as getting content out, but meeting with men, I get, Joe, I meet with men sometimes 3 times a week that reach out to me that are just struggling, and they're struggling with, and they just see something. They either struggle with unbelief or struggle with the things that the things that are just killing our men and our nation in general, as far as whether it's porn or whatever it happens to be, these things that bring a lot of shame to them. But the funny thing is, they just see. So if you knew me last year, a year ago at this time, I mean, I'm not the nicest person. I spent a whole lot of my life all about me, and just pretty ruthless from time to time, and had a rough upbringing. And then from there, I got into college, and I learned how to grow fangs and fight back, and just haven't been the best kind of person. And a lot of it was just growing up in broken homes, and I did grow up in church, but I was drugged through every kind of church you could possibly imagine, and we always had to leave because there was some kind of problem. And it took me a long time to figure out we were the problem. But as you get older, and the scales fall off, and you see who your parents are for who they really are. And I lived 4.5 hours. Something like that. 3.5 hours away from my dad. And we just had it was just a rough childhood. There was a lot of physical stuff going on, and it just not understanding what unconditional love is. And I think, a lot of times you have, like John Eldredge addresses, the father wound. And I definitely had some of that that I had to address a lot later in life. Didn't even realize how much I was affected by it. But what a lot of people miss is when you don't grow up in a household where you are loved, like unconditionally loved, and I'm not talking about discipline. If you love your children, you discipline them, and your children know that on a base level. If you don't grow up in a house where you are unconditionally loved, we are all limited initially of how we view God by how our parents treated us. And so I could never, ever accept that there was this God out there that knew me, that loved me unconditionally, and especially the type of person I was. And so I began to ask a whole lot of questions, and I had read tons of books, and I met with quote unquote Bible scholars. And it took about 2 years, 2 agonizing years for me to lose my faith. And then I did. I denounced it and walked away. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And I tell you, and I think God gave me the time. I mean, I do. And then God, a couple years before I finally got saved, I mean, he started working on me hard. And it was, things would happen and they would be so personal, so intentional, and so timely that, I mean, how many times in a row can you say, what a coincidence? And, you know, if there's 27 coincidences, it's not really a coincidence. And so for me, I think God had to get me to a breaking point. He had to get me to a point where I stepped in something so bad or so wrong or hurt the person I cared about the most that in that moment, that person forgave me immediately, said, I love you and I don't care. And in that moment, Joe, I broke. And now, if you meet people, they will tell you I'm an aggressive man and I don't break. And I broke. And I just realized in that moment what it's like to be loved. And that, it took 2 more years, but that was the first moment of God showing up in my life through someone else. And after a lot of shame or whatever happened to be came into the limelight or into the sunlight, then it was my wife's friends and their husbands from church that reached out to me. And they began to take me to dinner, or we'd meet out for a drink or something. And no judgment, just caring, ask how I'm doing, and just were there. And that's so opposite of what you hear about church people. And I can tell you that, and I have said this, and I said it the day I preached several times, and I've said it ever since. Our lives are our greatest witness. And these people were living it every day, and I saw Jesus in them. And then God showed up in a big way later on. But part of that too. So I'll give you an example. So all these years, I'm angry. I'm a very angry person all these years, and I've been angry. I decided to finally go talk to a counselor, and my wife and I so I've been married for almost 17 years. So, and we've been to marriage counseling a few times, and we feel like it's healthy to go from time to time and make sure we're still on the same page. So we were kind of talking about going back, and I said, I think I'd like to go. And so we met with a guy, and I said, I think I'd like to meet with you one-on-one. I just have a lot of anger, and I'd like to get rid of my anger. And he said, okay, well, how long have you been angry? And I was like, I don't know, about 25 years or so. He said, okay. And so I'll fast forward through a whole lot of stuff. But what essentially happened was a few months later, now keep in mind, I'm not saved at this point. Okay. Things have been progressing for about 1.5 years, but I'm not saved. And so I get to a point where I realize this massive amount of unforgiveness that I have. And in that moment, I knew it, but I didn't realize that I was carrying this unforgiveness for myself. And in that moment, I was able to forgive myself. And when I did, I was able to forgive my mother, who I had a terrible relationship with for decades due to my childhood. And in that moment, I saw her for what she was, and I saw myself for what I was. But she was a broken person who had gone through some abuse herself. And it changed me. Well, I saw my mother about a month later at my grandmother's visitation. And my mother actually we didn't get to say much. she had to leave early because she fell ill at the visitation, and she was headed out with her husband, and asked her where she was going, and she said she wasn't feeling well, and I said, hey Mom, if you need anything, call me, and I just want you to know I love you. Now, I hadn't told my mom I loved her in probably 20 years. And then the next day is a funeral, and she was too sick to make it. So I called her that night, and I said, can I bring you anything? Do you need something? She said, no, I'm feeling better. And she was just so thankful to hear from me because I didn't talk to her very much. And I said, hey, Mom, I just want you to know I love you. And if you need something, you call me. And a week later, my mom died abruptly, just passed away. And in that moment, I realized that I was spared. I was spared resentment, regret, anger, unforgiveness. I was spared all these things because a few weeks earlier, God was leading me down a path of forgiving her, knowing that might eat me up forever. And I saw it. I heard it when I called my brother to tell him he was angry and bitter and resentful. And I just knew that I had been, and I used that word spared, and I wasn't even a believer. And it was a few weeks later and a couple other things that happened that I said, God, I'm going to trust you. And I had asked God for something, and he didn't give it to me, but I said, you know what, I'm going to trust you. And then 10 minutes later, he gave it to me. I mean, it's just one of those things, like that's how God works. He gives you enough, but you've got to step out. He's going to give you enough to make the choice. And if you step out in faith, he's going to immediately reward your faith. And I think that's where we have to get. We have to get in our lives to the point where when God gives you enough, when his cloud moves just enough, that you step out there. And he's going to turn around and he's going to reward your faith immediately, because that's what he does. And we've got to get to a point where we're doing that monthly, weekly, and daily, because then God can accomplish what he wants to through us. And everything that he does is he tries to work to restore his people so that others can be brought unto him. Your life is your greatest witness.
It's awesome that those people stepped forward to get to know you and build a relationship with you with absolutely no strings attached, really.
It was critical. It was opposite of everything I could remember about church growing up. Because remember, we left every church under bad terms. I mean, whether it was them or whether it was, my mom or whatever it happened to be, things just didn't end well. And there was a lot of anger and bitterness, and, it was vocal. And this is how I view people from church, even though I knew better people than that. Growing, later on as I got older, I knew better people than that. But I still had that view. And so the fact that you're right, no strings attached. You're like, hey, man, we just want you to know we love you. What can we do for you? I mean, and a lot of times just wouldn't even talk about it. Just hang out, watch the game. And I was appreciative of it. And so dealing with a whole lot of, I was so insecure. I didn't even know I was insecure. I mean, when I went to college and I got in the biggest fraternity and learned how to drink the most and fight the biggest and do all that kind of stuff, and it turns out I was probably the most scared. I didn't even know it. And what was interesting is once I had my breakthrough, once I got to this point of forgiveness and I got saved, I realized immediately who I was in Christ. It was like flipping a switch. I even wrote a post on it that if you talk to people that know me, that have known me, they won't tell you I'm different. They'll tell you that I'm the opposite of who I was. And that is really God taking a heart of stone and giving me a heart of flesh. There's no two ways about it. That's the way it is. And so God's given me a passion to help men so they can help other men. I think there's, like I listened to you talked to Joseph Cartwright last week, right? And you can see, I mean, when you're on Instagram and you're checking websites and blogs, there's been this rise of the Christian man, and we're all running around here trying to figure out what does biblical manhood look like. I mean, that's what it seems like. That's what we're all after, and there's a larger than a handful of us, but not a not a tremendous amount of us yet that are asking these questions. And so for me, I have a passion around that as well. And a lot of it has to do with, some of the same ways that John Eldridge may look at it, or I definitely appreciate Cartwright's approach to being on fire, that God's this all-consuming fire. I just think that we have to be honest with ourselves first. And we have to say, I had to get honest with myself to say, there are a lot of areas in my life at that time that I wasn't happy about, but the bottom line is I was angry all the time. That's not normal. Overly angry. Now, I never got to the point where I'm doing anything abusive or anything like that, but would just fly off the handle at some shoes in the middle of the floor. And that's just not normal. And you have to get to a point where you're looking in the mirror going, I don't like this, and this isn't normal. But I also realize that there's got to be a root cause to this. And so you've got to get honest with yourself first. And then you've got to go face your past. And you've got to face it, whether it's your spouse, or whether it's your friends, or whether it's a professional that has no personal ties to you whatsoever, but their sole job in life is to help you get there, whatever it happens to be. I think a lot of men shy away from counselors or psychiatrists. You break your leg, you go to an orthopedic surgeon. You got pull your groin, you go to a doctor, but you won't go to somebody to talk to them if you need some mental health fixes. And I do not understand that. Men should be men enough to go get help wherever they need to get it. And I think that's the second piece is facing your past, because that will allow you to get the restoration in Christ. That will absolutely, because once you know who you are in that, then you don't have to be insecure. You don't have to be anything else. You don't have to be angry. And so I think we're all trying to figure out, what is this biblical manhood that we're supposed to be? We have these examples, but I'm interested because I think we are having the rise of people like you and like me, and like the Cartwrights of the world, because we were kind of sold a lie as a society. We were told, our fathers and our grandfathers were told, if you go to work and you provide for your family and you take them to church on Sunday, then that's it, man. Good Christian man, you got it. You nailed it. And I think it's a lie. I think we missed the boat. I think an entire generation trained up a generation of apathetic Christians. And that's why I see that the rest of us are now looking for fire. And what does that mean? We know that there's a righteous anger, but we have to be careful with that. We can't misuse that. We need to clearly define that. But it's in our nature to get angry. So there has to be a part of that that's righteous. We see Jesus do it, but when is it okay? Because it was always about the person standing in front of Jesus, right? That's the thing. He may criticize this person or say something, but he's always focused on the person in front of him. He knew when to use the righteous anger and when not to. And I think we have to be careful with that, just because it's been abused at points in the past. But I think you've got to take men like us that are hungry to be all in for God, all in every day. And we have to move past what happened before as far as believing what a good Christian man is. And we need to kind of go back to get to the right level of that. And then we need to meet men. And we need to mentor men. I recently challenged our group at church. If you're waiting to be perfect or 60 to mentor other men, you're waiting too long, because nobody's perfect. And by the time you're 60, you've missed out on 30 years of being able to mentor people. And it's not about official mentoring relationships. It's about going to lunch. It's about having somebody at your house to cook out. It's about, like you said, spending time with someone at church, getting to know another man, because we need encouragement. And you know what else I find? I find if I surround myself with Christian men who believe for big things, it's easier for me to believe for big things. And it's easier for me to submit to God and resist the devil. It's easier for me not to sin. And that's what I want to do. I believe you can walk in righteousness, which is right standing with God. The scriptures say that. And so I think this thought process of, well, we're fallen, we're sinful, there's nothing we can do about it, we're just horrible people all day, every day, I think is wrong. I think it's another lie. I think we are sinful. We all have fallen short, but when Christ is in you, there's more good than bad. And you can be in right standing with God. Righteousness doesn't mean perfect. It means when God is showing you something, whether it's, in my case, a lot of times it's pride. I got to get on my knees and I got to crucify that thing. And I get back up because I'm in right standing with God, and I go about my day trying to be like Jesus. I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you, Joe.
I agree with you 100%, as I saw my dad being as even a Christian, godly man, super committed to his family, but he never had any friends. He never had anybody that he could share his difficulties with, that he could share his troubles with, right? And you see the problems that is causing in the church. You see the problems that is causing in our society. So obvious. Like you said about having issues with anger and needing to share that with other people or seek help in that area. When you have men around you that know your strengths, know your weaknesses, then those things become easier to deal with because you are not worried about pleasing or appeasing the rest of the world. You have your core group of guys that you know are around you that accept you for who you are and accept your strengths and accept your weaknesses, and you can bear those things to them. And then when you're struggling with something, man, it's just a quick text message. Hey, man, can you pray for me? No long explanation needed, no phone call, no embarrassment, nothing. It's just, hey, I need you right now. Can you say a quick prayer for me? I'm struggling with something. And to have that kind of relationship and that kind of bond with one another is so sorely lacking. And to hear even how that group extended their arms out to you and their hands out to you to just, say, hey, let's go watch a game or something like that, how integral and how important that was, and you coming back to the flock, how they were used of God to bring that lost sheep back. It's once again, it just assures me that this brotherhood and lack thereof in our churches right now is maybe the biggest problem facing church today.
Or I can only speak for me. The reason that I need men that I can lean on, besides the fact that they challenge me, is that when I find men who struggle with the same sin that I struggle with, they can understand it to the depths far greater than my wife ever could. And I think, to me, that's the most important thing. My wife would understand, but she can't get it to the level that a man would struggle with it. And on top of that, there's a point where I think it's hard for a wife to, I think there's a point where it might be difficult for a wife to understand the depths of how a man struggles in certain areas, but other men do. And when you find those men that don't judge, and they're just like, yeah, man, I'll pray for you. Or they'll check in with you. How you doing? I'm thinking about you right now. Is everything you good? Sometimes it's a perfectly timed text message. Hey, man, thank you for checking in. And so for me, men are better in small groups. There's no doubt about that. It's why women's ministries tend to grow faster and be stronger in the church environment. But men are good at coffee, and they're good at drinks, and they're good at lunch, and they're good at football or whatever it happens to be. And it's those groups of one or two where you get them one-on-one where things begin to open up. So that's where we're at today. That's where we're at today with the blog. That's where we're at today. You and I talking in your podcasts. It's not despising the things of small beginnings, right? I mean, we don't know what kind of fire can catch if we continue to talk about it, continue to reach out to people, and continue to live it every day. God can do more. He can do more in a day than we could do in a decade. And so I think if we just keep talking about it and keep following God and trying to be more like Jesus, people that are adamantly against Christianity are going to see it. That's what happened to me. I was pretty good at debating Christians on the other side. And I can tell you unequivocally that God showed up in my life and he came roaring in. And it's not something I have to doubt anymore. And he's given me this passion to help men because we're all messed up. I mean, you're a parent. I'm a parent. And even I see my kids aren't getting out alive. I mean, no one's going to get it perfect. But I want to encourage them to be open, to talk about it, and to realize nobody's perfect. And so I think as men, we need to step up, get men around us, get honest with yourself, get help, get restored, and get men around you, flat out. And then we need to start being more vocal. I mean, we have a lot of people that go to church every Sunday, a lot of good men, but how many of them have had a conversation with their wife and said, you know what, let's just stop. Let's pray about that. We've got to lead. We've got to lead in the right way. And, I mean, the bottom line, the statistics are in, right? That if it's men driving the family to go to church, if it's men are the ones that are engaged, there's like a 90% chance they're going to stay. And if it's the wife, there's a 40% chance they're going to stay. I mean, it's all about us leading. And to do that, we need to know who we are. That'd be my challenge is get honest with yourself. Find out where you don't like who you are. Figure out how to get healed on that. Start praying about it. Let Jesus work on you. I'm with you, Joe. Get men around you. Get men around you. To me, that's been one of the most important things. I have a really, really good brother-in-law that checks in with me and he builds me up. I had a friend from college, man, that I've seen a few times over the last decade, and he reached out, took me to lunch, and he said, I see what you're doing, and I appreciate it, and I want you to know, like, I understand how hard it is to keep pouring into people, and I just want you to know if you just need me, if you just need someone to speak into you or pray for you or just pour into you to fill you up, I'm here, man. And I was just blown away with that someone would take the time to reach out to me, to take me to lunch and say, all I want to do is pour into you when you're empty. And man, it just makes you humble, and I'm just so thankful for these men that are in my life because, Jesus had his disciples, but he had his three, right? He had his Peter, James, and John, and we all need a Peter, James, and John.
Could not agree with you more.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Scott Smith as much as I did. Actually, it's not uncommon for after I get done recording the podcast to continue speaking with whoever I've talked to, whether it be John Slavin or here Scott Smith, for another hour or more. Well, I ended up talking to Scott for probably another hour and a half, 2 hours. So I got to thinking as I was talking to him that rather than take our 2.5 hour conversation and only posting, 35, 45 minutes podcast, why not take some of those tidbits, some of those nuggets, some of our conversation that we had afterwards and allow you guys to listen to it, to kind of listen in on what was going on after the show. So what I got permission from Scott. He said, yeah, go ahead and do what I wanted to do with that content. I'm going to put that up on some of it. I'll sort through it and find out where the nuggets are. And we'll be putting that on Patreon.com/Ever Vigilant. So I think I might be doing a little bit more often because, like I said, a lot of times there's some good conversation, some good points, some solid information that's given and talked about after the show, and this would give us a chance to put it out there, to share it with those that are listening to the podcast. So again, you can find these, we'll call them golden nuggets from our conversation after the show on Patreon.com/Ever Vigilant. There's no paywall to this stuff. This stuff will be available to you guys free of charge. I would appreciate you checking it out. Leave a comment there. Let me know what you think about the podcast. Let me know what you think about putting this extra stuff, putting some extras. Let me know if you like the way that I end up doing it. It's not going to be very edited. I think I'll just kind of like pick out the pieces that we want on there, maybe a quick intro to it, quick outro to it, and make it very simple for me to do, quick to do, not a lot of editing. give you guys some bonus materials. And also, I would like to drive you guys to Patreon.com/Ever Vigilant. I think it's a great place for us to engage with one another, to comment on the podcast, and to get to know one another a little bit better. It's a very clean platform. I do have a Facebook page, Vigilant Wolf, but Facebook is getting harder and harder to navigate with more and more ads. The problem with Facebook right now, if you are a business or if you are trying to have a podcast on there or run your business through there, it's all about boosting your posts, and boosting posts so that I can get information out to even your followers costs money. So I think that's a little ridiculous, and I don't think it's very friendly towards what we are trying to accomplish. So if you would like to, check out Patreon.com, a way that we can communicate with one another and encourage and challenge one another. It's not a replacement for building the brotherhood in your neighborhood or with those men that are around you, but it's a place where we can encourage one another and push each other in the right direction and help each other get that stuff started. Have a bigger hub where we can join one another. But for now, if you want to check it out, go check out this bonus material that we had left over, the B-roll, the footage that ended up on the floor of the editing room. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Remember, you can always check out vigilantwolf.com. The sales there support the podcast, support what we have going on here. I would appreciate you taking a look. We've got beard balms, beard oils, holsters, and some podcast swag on there. If you like what's going on here and you want to support the podcast, it would be very much appreciated. I'm looking to be putting out more content, more videos. You can go to YouTube, look up a Vigilant Wolf. I'm going to get things going a little bit more with YouTube, with just some short videos. I'll always post that stuff on Patreon.com as in the video form, and I will put that stuff up as bonus extra podcasts where you normally find your podcast or where you normally find Ever Vigilant. But trying to get out there and move into some other spaces besides just podcast by using video to attract some different people that might not listen to podcasts but might watch a short video. Those will be much shorter than the podcast. So let me know what you think about those ideas. If that's something you'd be interested in, if you guys have any idea on promoting this podcast or getting this out there to more people, more men, so that we can further the mission of the podcast here to challenge and encourage men to prepare, defend, and lead at home in their communities. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you being part of what's going on here. Hold fast. And God bless.
For the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack.
As we jump out of the time machine, I want to say thanks for coming along for the ride. If you are feeling stuck, lost, frustrated, and as if you're lacking a purpose, if you're in a rut and just going through the motions day after day like so many of you are, if I could guarantee to help get you out of this rut, to help you find clarity and direction in your life, to feel confident in yourself and your decisions, and to find purpose, would you take me up on that offer? Here's how this offer works. You work with me one-on-one. We'll meet via Zoom for 45 minutes for 12 weeks, and this is what I'll provide you with. A personalized plan to get you unstuck and very clear on where you're going. Video lessons so that you can learn what you need to do, and assignments so you can put into practice what you learn, and challenges along the way to get you outside of your comfort zone where growth occurs and confidence is born. And I'll even provide you with everything you need, including my favorite book on leadership, an awesome journal, and several field notebooks for different activities along the way. Now, there will be effort and sacrifice involved because everything of value has a price. But I will be with you every step of the way with 24/7 support via text so that I can help you keep on task. You will need to show up on time, prepared for the one-on-one calls, complete the lessons, challenges, and assignments. But don't worry. Where right now you see uncertainty, I see your potential. I've been there and have experienced this journey myself firsthand. Now, what happens if you show up on time for your calls, you complete your lessons and challenges, and you don't have the clarity and direction in your life, you don't feel confident in yourself and your decisions, and you don't find your purpose? Then I'll keep coaching you for free until you do. There's absolutely no risk of you not leveling up. This program isn't about change, and it's not about evolution. It's about a new you. It's about uncovering the hero that's within you, but has been buried under years of lies, fear, and expectations of others. Sure, you can continue doing nothing, but we know exactly where that leads. You can do it yourself by reading countless books, watching a bunch of YouTube videos. Be careful, the cat videos get distracting. And listening to hours of podcasts, hoping to find something that clicks. But if you're serious about finally taking control of your life, dropping the excuses, and becoming the husband, father, and leader you want to be, let's schedule a strategy call where we can design a plan to get you out of that rut and headed where you want to go. So I know a lot of you guys have maybe listened through that for the last several weeks and been questioning what the strategy call is and if it would be for you. So this week I received a message from somebody who's been a long-time listener to this podcast and has over the years become a friend. And what he mentioned to me here is that, thanks for all the prayers. Our call at the beginning of the year sparked a vision. This is the first step in a freedom movement for me. If you're looking for a freedom movement for you or looking for some clarity in your life, go to heroeswanted.com/coaching and schedule a strategy call. Let's look into where you are at today, where you want to go, and find you a solid plan to get you from point A to point B. As always, men, hold fast and God bless.